the WagonR, Maruti Suzuki's blue-eyed boy. It's more like a boy next door, a face that is forgettable, easily gets lost in the crowd. If he was registered on a matrimony site, he would be one of those simple, elegant boys who has all the right qualifications, does everything right, but there's nothing that is special, nothing that stands out. But it seems people like that sort of a thing, because for the last 10 years, consistently, the WagonR has been in the top 10 best-selling cars of India. And now the WagonR family has given birth to a new kid. It still looks like a part of the WagonR family, thanks to the typical boxy silhouette. But even a glance will tell you that the new WagonR is now larger. For the longest time, the Japanese spec Suzuki WagonR was a K car. Look it up and you'll find out that K cars are a segment in Japan which essentially constitute of compact hatchbacks with small engines. Because the new WagonR had to be a larger car to take on its new generation rivals, it needed a newer platform. And that is where the 5th generation of the Hardtech comes in. Now the Hardtech is a common term, it's the same platform that underpins cars like the Swift, the Baleno, if you haven't guessed it, even the Ignis. But though the Ignis and the WagonR come from similar backgrounds, their intent is different. While the Ignis is crossover-ish and a fun driver, the new WagonR is a practical people carrier. It's more muscular now with its well-defined wheel arches and has a bodywork that is wider than the glass house, which adds balance to its tall boy form. The headlamps are fairly large, but the notches on the side prevent them from looking drab. The taillights look very MPV, but highlight the tall boy stance of the WagonR. There was never really a pretty angle for the WagonR, but I think the new one from all angles looks pretty appealing than before. I like the design of the rear three-quarter. It has that Ertiga-like floating pillar effect, but I particularly like the front three-quarters. From where it looks a bit like the Ignis, it has an Ignis vibe to it, and interestingly, it even sits on a similar wheelbase as that fun-loving car. So the wheelbase is now longer and the track is wider at the front and back. While that doesn't exactly make the WagonR look sporty, you do have the option to add a funky spoiler, colourful scuff plates and fog lamp bezels. You can also add some funky panels inside the cabin, which I think is a very good move, because unlike some of the WagonR's rivals, which only allow you to customize a bezel around the AC vent or a bezel around the infotainment, there's a lot more customization that you can do with the WagonR, which I think is again a page out of the book of the Ignis. A little more Ignis connection continues with this AC vent. Like the Ignis, the flow of this AC vent is again obstructed by your hand and the steering wheel, which I think is a bit of a design flaw which Maruti Suzuki should address with the updates of this platform or the cars that are based on this platform. But the design of the cabin of the WagonR is still very WagonR. Everything is functional yet very simple. Everything seems like it's fallen into a grid layout, which is typical WagonR. I think Maruti Suzuki should have upped the game a little bit more, given you funkier inlays, a little bit more texture to the overall elements of the dashboard, and that would have really lifted the mood of this car and would have gone with the youthful vibe that this car is trying to portray. But then again, a youthful vibe or the sporty nature is not the intent of the WagonR. It is, of course, practicality and space, and compared to the outgoing WagonR, there's plenty of it in here. So while the cool cup holder is missed, there are many well-designed storage spaces for bottles and knickknacks. And while the larger tailgate now opens higher and may be difficult to reach for some, the boot is almost double in size. Another talking point about the WagonR's cabin is the new infotainment system. Now this is the new Smart Play system compared to what we have experienced earlier. This is a little more feature rich. This can now connect to up to 3 phones at a time. It has Apple CarPlay, it has Android Auto, but interestingly, you can turn off these interfaces if you like. So you can have your phone connected via the cable to this infotainment, but you can also turn off the smartphone interface, and you can have its own interface, which is called the Smart Play Studio. So it's again an app that is available on the iPhones and the Android phones, and it lets you gain a little more functionality or extract a little more functionality out of this infotainment. So you have the AHA radio, or AHA radio as they like to call it, which is essentially an internet radio, and apart from playing your regular music, it can also play news channels, audio news channels over the radio, which I think is a nice bit of addition, because in your day-to-day life, in your daily rush hour, if you just want to summon the radio to announce all the news to you, I think you can do that quite fine. If you don't want to do that, if you want to rely on your regular smartphone interface like your Android Auto and your CarPlay, like I said, even that is available. The audio system, I don't think is up to the mark. The infotainment is really very functional, quite feature rich in that sense, but the audio is just about there. It's just very entry level. The audio sounds a little tinny, and that's a bit of a downside. But then it uses very conventional speaker mechanisms throughout the car, so upgrading it in the aftermarket shouldn't be a problem at all. The instrumentation is easy to read. All the switches in the car look familiar and are easy to reach. The front seats are adequately large, but none of the seats have adjustable headrests. And the ones at the rear seat especially seem unsafe for taller passengers. The rear seat also misses out on ISOFIX child seat mounts, so if you need them, the Ignis is a better bet. Space was always the trump card for the WagonR, and the new one just takes it a step forward. With a wider track, the wider body and that longer wheelbase, there's a lot more space that has been liberated inside this cabin. Look at the kind of headroom that I have. You're never going to feel claustrophobic in here. Look at the kind of knee room I have with the driver's seat set to my driving preference. I also have a generous amount of foot space, so under thigh support is not going to be a problem because you can stretch out your legs quite nicely. So overall, in terms of the room, it's very nice. In terms of its comfort, I think this is adequately comfortable for the kind of segment that this car dwells in. Over long distances, this might get a little uncomfortable because I don't really like the angle of the seat backrest. It's a little too reclined for my preference. I would have liked it a little more upright, but people of different sizes might feel differently about this. But overall, I think this is a nice and comfortable place to be in. So whether it's the private segment or the fleet segment, I think this car is going to appeal to both the segments quite well for the kind of space that it offers. For 4 adults, I think this is a very good car. For 2 adults and 2 kids also, obviously it's a very good car, but this kind of a choice you will have to also make with the engine. Why? I'm going to show you right now. Maruti Suzuki is offering the new WagonR with 2 engine options. You have the 1-litre 3-cylinder K-Series engine that gets carried forward from the previous car. And you also have the 1.2-litre 4-cylinder K-Series motor that you also get in the other premium hatchbacks in the Maruti Suzuki lineup. So why I said you could make your engine choice depending on the kind of family you're going to be faring is because if you have a nuclear family, if you're going to predominantly have between 1 to 3 kids in the back seat for most of the time, then you could settle for the 1-litre engine like before. It does duty quite well. This car is also quite light now, so it's a little more sprightlier than before. It's also more fuel efficient than before. But if you're going to be ferrying around 2 adults most of the time in the back seat, or if you're going to be driving around inclines more often, then the 1.2-litre engine would make more sense. The 1.2-litre engine was possible courtesy of the Heartect platform, and even sounds better and has lesser vibrations thanks to its 4-cylinder configuration. But if that and the touchscreen infotainment don't matter to you much, then the 1-litre variant should do just fine for you. Furthermore, the automated transmission is available on both the engines, and that makes the 1-litre variant even more valuable. The AMT is convenient as ever, and once you take into account the shift pause, it is easy to take a liking to. A small grudge I have with the new WagonR is with the steering system. It just doesn't feel as connected as some of the other cars on the Heartect platform. This one feels a little too vague. It feels quite dead at center. And that's not a good feeling to have, especially when you're driving around twisty roads like I am right now. It just lacks feedback. There is a lot of kickback from the steering wheel when you're hitting undulations or when you're hitting potholes. But driving around bends, I would have liked it to be a little more communicative. And that's something that I'm going to miss on this car. That's one thing that is not going to make this car as fun to drive as some of the other cars on the Heartect platform. I would have liked larger wing mirrors too, but their small size and the slim A-pillar make for an exceptionally good visibility from the driver's seat, making the WagonR an easy driver even for newbies. What I also like with the new WagonR is this. The suspension setup has improved quite a bit. Even on some of the sharper bumps, it doesn't thud and crash like it used to previously. This one has a more composed ride, it's got a more silent ride, it's a more comfortable ride. So overall, I think that's a big improvement over the outgoing car. The new WagonR does feel a little under-tired. The tires feel a little too skinny, especially when you're going around bends, and if you're not with a full house, it does tend to sway quite a bit. Especially there is a lot of body roll as well. There is plenty of vertical movement. In fact, you could have seen it right now. I just took a small turn at a very slow speed and still there is plenty of vertical movement. So that is something that you need to take into account when you're driving around mountain roads. It's certainly not a driver's car. If you need that sort of a thing, there are other options within the Maruti Suzuki lineup as well. This is, like I said, a more practical approach towards the hatchback. It's more spacious. It is meant to ferry people around in comfort, and that is something that it does quite well. With that under-tired feeling, add to it the lightweight architecture of this car, and it does feel a little floaty at speed, especially when you're driving at highway speeds. It does feel a little floaty. So it is essentially a city car that can also go to the highway, but it's not something that you should experiment too much with when you're out on the highway. Stick to the speed limits and be safe. Speaking of which, the WagonR gets ABS and front airbags as a standard fit. The new chassis is also 1.5 times stronger than before, despite being lighter and larger. There's no denying then that the new WagonR offers plenty more value than before, but it's a bit of a downer that the 1-litre variant isn't available in the top trim. The 1.2 that gets all the bells and whistles is priced very similar to the Ignis, and while both cars have different intents, the Ignis is still the better package overall and also comes with the desirable Nexa experience. The WagonR 1-litre therefore is still the bread earner and the hero for the family, and deserves a better kit than what Maruti Suzuki has currently decorated it with.